Okay, tough cookies. We're talking about stress and hardship and how we compare that to other people's stress and hardship. Because we do this, I know people do this. We can look at other people's lives and say, my life is harder than yours. Or sometimes we can be honest and say, you've got a harder life than me. That's just the way it is. And if we had some kind of cosmic measure of an average level of hardship and stress for the entire human race, we could potentially look at the average and say, you're above average, you're below average, and whatever. But we don't have that. And even if we did have that, it misses a slightly deeper understanding about stress and hardship and people's lives in general, which is that the things that we feel and it goes beyond stress and hardship, but I think stress and hardship is what I'm focusing on because I'm going to talk about how we can develop more capacity for stress and hardship or more tolerance for it in a second. But we can see that a person's feelings towards stress and hardship, or a person's understanding of stress and hardship, or their capacity to be able to deal with it, is relative to that person, not relative to an average or to somebody else. So yes, you could look at somebody else and say, oh man, my life is a lot harder than theirs, but that doesn't mean that their life isn't genuinely hard to them based on the life that they've had and the experiences that they've had. And the same could be said in reverse in terms of how easy a person's life might be. We could look at somebody's life and say, my life is much easier than your life, but they might find their life pretty easy. And it's all down to the individual. So rather than benchmarking across, the entire human race, or even just your friends and your family, it doesn't really work like that because it's more relative to the individual than it is to understanding how you compare to other people. But what we can do to develop this is be meta-humans, right? So we have the ability to think about our thinking, which a lot of other animals don't do. So we can stop and think about the way we think about stuff, analyze it, and use that information to help us make decisions in the future, whether we choose to think the same way or whether we choose to practice a different way of thinking, or just update our knowledge about how we think. So it might be that not that we're really making good or bad decisions or changing much, it's just an updated version like we would do with our phones and our computers, which, by the way, on a side note, is something I don't think we do very often or often enough, is allow ourselves to update our thinking. We just have old thoughts and beliefs that we've had for years and they never change because why would they? But I think it's a good thing to update our thinking. Anyway, getting back to the topic of stress and hardship, is that if we are able to be meta-humans and think about our thinking, whatever level of capacity and tolerance we have to deal with hard times and stressful times, if we can allow ourselves moments or times to be able to think about that and recognize that if this is our capacity, there is definitely capacity above that. There's room for more, because obviously there are people in the world who are having a lot harder time than we are and a lot more stressful time than we are, but it's relative, right? That doesn't mean that what you're feeling isn't hard and isn't stressful. But being meta-human, or being able to think about our thinking, means that we have an understanding that even if this is our capacity and even if this is our tolerance, we know that there is room for more. And so this might feel genuinely, this level might feel really, really genuinely stressful and genuinely hard, and that doesn't change. But this is where we can use what we're practicing, like we do with training for our bodies. We're building strength and robustness in our bodies. We can build additional strength and robustness in our minds by having this tool in our toolbox, which is knowing that, essentially, to oversimplify it, things can be a lot worse. We could be in war-torn countries. We could be in dire situations a lot worse than we're in right now, and having to deal with those things. And I don't want to just say like, oh, other people have got it a lot worse and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that because, like I say, I keep coming back to this point. It's relative to the individual. So I'm not just saying like, oh, a lot of people have got it worse. Think of all these people who are in worse situations. But I'm saying that we have the ability to think about our thinking and know that the level of capacity that we have is based on our own experiences. And with that knowledge, we can be aware that if our experiences were different, we would have a different level of capacity and tolerance for stress and hardship. Now, that doesn't change anything other than our perspective. We still have that level of stress and hardship going on in our life, but our perspective of it changes because we can at least, if nothing else, be aware that we're probably fine and we're probably more than able to cope with it. And if nothing else, this can give us a little bit of that additional robustness in our mental fortitude to be able to go, okay, you know what, I know I'm finding this hard and this situation is stressing me out, but actually it's pretty much okay. And I am able to deal with it. And so instead of letting it get on top of me, I'm aware that I'm a stronger person or a strong enough person, and that even if I feel like I'm at my capacity, there is more. And that means that I am more than capable and able to deal with this, just with the simple fact that I'm thinking about my thinking. And just with the simple fact that I'm using this tool, that's what makes it possible. And it doesn't make it easier, but it makes it possible. And it makes you have the ability to be able to deal with more if you need it. So it's a little bit of a, like I say, when we get meta about things and we go layers deep, it starts getting to a point where I hopefully explain it well, but it becomes a harder thing for our brains to comprehend because, like I say, we're thinking about thinking as opposed to just thinking, which sounds crazy to just say anyway. But hopefully it makes sense, and hopefully it's one of these things that we can practice and develop in the way we approach things and to remind ourselves of when things are getting hard, that allows us to be able to deal with things better. And I know I certainly need this as well as anyone else might need it. But it's something that we can use for mental training, just like we do with our physical training. And hopefully it's a little trigger for you to, or whether it's a reminder or whether it's new information that you can use in your own sort of mental fortitude growth, to help you better deal with stressful and hard situations in life.